I always say there's a razor-thin line between an ordinary year and one that completely transforms someone's destiny. And this line, almost always invisible, isn't drawn by luck, by a stroke of fortune, or by some miraculous opportunity that fell from the sky. Instead, it's defined by something far more subtle, something few people even notice when it occurs. A specific attitude, a simple, sometimes even tedious gesture that triggers a domino effect, turning 12 months into what feels like a full decade of concentrated progress, achieved in record time. And as I say this, perhaps you feel something stirring within you, perhaps a weight on your chest, that discomfort that arises when we try to ignore the sensation that we're falling behind, despite working hard, despite doing everything right. How many times have you looked in the mirror and silently wondered, why does it seem like everyone else is moving forward but I'm stuck? How many times have you had that feeling that your life could be so much more, yet something invisible always holds you back at the same point? It's curious. In all these years training people both on and off stage, most who sought me out believed their problem was a lack of money. And almost always the lack wasn't of resources. It was of ritual, of direction, of attitude, of the courage to break an old pattern that had been repeating for years. And that's exactly what I want to reveal now, the 10 attitudes that can generate 1 million in 1 year. Not because 1 million in itself is the ultimate goal, but because the kind of person you become by building that capability is something no amount of money can buy. And to begin, I need to tell you something few people know. Years ago, when I was still living in a small apartment that barely had room for a table, I found myself trapped in a very dangerous mental cycle. I would look at my bills, look at the almost empty refrigerator, and wonder how someone in those conditions could change their own destiny. My biggest fear wasn't being poor. My biggest fear was remaining stuck in the same life forever. And one day, alone in that cramped kitchen, I realized there were 2 paths before me. Repeat everything I had always done, or do something totally different that would pull me out of the zone I had been in for years. And it was there that I developed the first of the attitudes I want to share with you now. Attitude 1. Cultivate a healthy obsession for daily improvement, the habit that unlocks financial multiplication. I discovered early on that wealth isn't born from grand leaps, it's born from repeated micro-decisions. Most people dream of 1 million but live on autopilot. They wake up rushing, make the same choices, engage in the same internal battles, return to the same emotional exhaustion, and at the end of the day say, "Tomorrow I'll do better." But tomorrow is always the same. So I started a simple but brutally effective ritual. Every single day before going to sleep, I would write down just one thing I would do better the following day. Just one. Not 10, not 20. One. And here's the impact of that. Studies show that small continuous improvements, when accumulated over 1 year, can generate exponential, not linear growth. The brain loves progress, and when it perceives evolution, no matter how small, it releases dopamine, reinforces the behavior, and creates a pattern of excellence. And if you look at any successful person today, athletes, entrepreneurs, artists, you'll notice the same thing. They all evolved in small, constant doses, not in sporadic explosions. Want a simple example to apply today? Choose one single thing you know is sabotaging your financial progress: impulsive spending, unproductive work, procrastination, a disorganized routine, constant comparisons, and declare, "Tomorrow, I'll do this 1% better." An entire year of consistently doing this transforms you into someone almost unrecognizable. Attitude 2. Master the skill of generating value, the most obvious key almost no one uses. I learned very early that money is a direct consequence of value, and the most common mistake I see is this. Many people want to earn more but continue offering exactly what they offered 5, 10, or 15 years ago. If you want to generate 1 million in 1 year, you need to ask yourself, what specific problem do I solve that holds significant value in the market? And more importantly, how many people can I impact with this solution? For example, when I started giving trainings, I noticed something. About 80% of people were afraid of public speaking, afraid to lead, afraid to trust their own voice. And I knew exactly how to transform that into confidence, into energy, into strategy. So I started to amplify, multiply, and teach this at scale. The value grew, the impact grew, and the income grew at the same speed. And here's a hard truth. If you're not growing financially, you're probably not growing in value. In today's world, where technology changes every single week, those who stop, sink. Those who expand their ability to solve problems, prosper. Now let me give you an impactful example involving someone you certainly know, Andre Agassi. Before transforming his career, he faced a deep emotional block that sabotaged his decisions. A gigantic talent, but with internal patterns that drained his performance. When he learned to align emotion, focus, and strategy, he exploded. And that is value. Pure value. Emotional value. Technical value. Human value. It wasn't luck. It was an internal attitude, and that attitude led him to extraordinary results. And let me ask you something. Are you truly becoming more valuable, or just more tired? Are you expanding your skills, or just repeating effort? It's easy to hide behind excuses. It's hard to accept that your results are proportional to your evolution. But when you accept it, you become a machine for multiplying results. Sometimes people ask me, when was the moment your financial life truly turned around? And I always answer something that surprises people. It wasn't when I earned more money. It was when I learned not to lose it emotionally, because most people don't become poor due to a lack of opportunity. They become poor due to an excess of fear, anxiety, and impulsiveness. And this leads us to the next attitude. Attitude. 3. Master your emotions before mastering money. I learned the hard way that you can destroy an entire year's work with just one emotional decision. Have you ever experienced this? A moment of stress, a personal problem, an unexpected demand. And on impulse, you make a purchase you shouldn't. Take out a loan you didn't need. Abandon a plan that was working, all because of a fleeting feeling? This is much more common than it seems. Research shows that more than 90% of financial decisions are made based on emotion, not logic. And when you live guided by emotion, you become its hostage. Your money starts to depend on your mood. Your progress depends on how you woke up. Your future depends on a chemical storm in your brain that lasts minutes. And I never forget an episode that changed the way I see this. I was in one of the most challenging periods of my life. I had just lost an important investment. I was emotionally exhausted, and the feeling of failure was knocking at the door. And on one of those days, completely drained, I almost abandoned a gigantic project I was building, a project that sometime later became one of the biggest milestones of my career. In that moment of despair, everything seemed useless. Have you ever been through this? When it seems like nothing is moving forward, that problems are piling up, that you're carrying the world on your shoulders and no one sees. I was there, holding the decision to give up. And I remember thinking, if I make this decision now, it will be motivated by pain, not by truth. And it was at that instant that I realized something. Whoever controls their emotions controls their destiny. Whoever loses control loses everything. What I learned that day, and what I want you to write down now, is, before making any decision involving money, ask 3 questions. Am I reacting, or am I choosing? Does this decision make sense 12 months from now, or just right now? If I were calm, would I decide the same? This changes everything. This protects you. This strengthens you. This saves you from the inner chaos that ruins fortunes, careers, and entire years of work. And here's the challenge I want to propose. For 7 days, do not make any financial decision while you are irritated, sad, tired, or anxious. Breathe. Wait. Come back later with a clear mind. You will be shocked at how much this eliminates losses, waste, and self-sabotage. And now, let's move on to the attitude that separates those who merely wish for 1 million from those who actually achieve it. Attitude 4. Create multiple streams of income before life forces. You too, if there's one truth that time confirms without fail, it's this. Anyone who depends on a single source of income lives in permanent risk. This isn't philosophy. This is mathematics, this is statistics, this is reality. And let me ask you some direct questions. How many times have you lost an opportunity because you only had one way to earn money? How many times have you felt fear because you knew that if that income stopped, everything would collapse? How many times have you postponed important decisions because you had no alternatives? When I started my journey, I had exactly this problem. I depended exclusively on my in-person events. It was all or nothing, and the nothing was terrifying. Until one day, in a moment of deep exhaustion, I realized I was living in a gilded cage. The more I grew, the more I became trapped in a single format. So I made a decision that changed everything. I diversified: online trainings, books, group programs, consultations, digital content, strategic partnerships. I built many doors, so if one closed, others would open. And here's something incredible. Behavioral science shows that people with multiple income streams experience up to 63% less financial stress and are twice as likely to achieve long-term goals. Because when you have alternatives, gummies, you have power. When you have power, you act better. And when you act better, money responds. And here's a crucial point. You don't need to wait until you're rich to create multiple income streams. You create multiple income streams to become rich. Perhaps today you work in something that consumes 8, 10, 12 hours of your day. But even so, there are paths: digital products, specialized services, simple mentorships, knowledge selling, the shared economy, content creation, affiliate marketing, freelancing, micro investments, micro services, automations, small digital products. The world has never offered so many doors, but people remain stagnant, waiting for a big opportunity while ignoring dozens of small opportunities that accumulated change lives. Now, before we move on to the next attitude, I need to do something essential. If up to this point you're feeling that this content is opening your mind, making you reflect, awakening something within you, then hit the like button and subscribe to the channel now. This isn't just a symbolic gesture. It helps the channel reach more people, shows the algorithm that this content matters, and allows me to continue bringing you deep videos like this one. It's a simple, quick, free gesture, and it makes all the difference for the channel's survival and growth. There's a silent behavior that separates those who grow every year from those who repeat the same life for decades. And I first noticed this not when I was on stage, but when I observed people backstage. Those who advanced acted differently in the face of a very simple thing: error. Those who broke behaved exactly the same when dealing with another equally simple element: life's feedback. And this brings us to the next attitude. Attitude 5. Turn errors into fuel and not into a prison. One of the most destructive beliefs people carry is the idea that making a mistake is shameful. But have you noticed that everything worthwhile in life requires experimenting, adjusting, trying again, and again, and again? When I started, I made mistakes that now seem obvious. I underestimated costs, overestimated my ability to achieve certain goals, disregarded opportunities that would later become giants. And the truth is, if I had given up at any of those moments, absolutely nothing I've built today would exist. But most people live with so much fear of making mistakes that they prefer not to try. Have you ever felt that? That chill in your stomach before making a decision, as if a single step could destroy you? That inner voice telling you, what if you fail? I know that voice. It tries to sabotage you precisely when you need courage the most. And I want to tell you something that happened to me. A mistake that almost destroyed everything. At one of my first major seminars, I bet practically all my savings to put the event together. I was confident, determined, but I completely underestimated the logistics. Technical failures, control failures, team failures. The event was a disaster. And I left owing money I simply didn't have. I could have given up. I could have concluded that this wasn't for me. But at that moment, feeling the weight of frustration, I looked at it and thought, if I can learn from this mistake, it will yield me more than it cost. And that's exactly what happened. The next event was bigger, better, more organized, more impactful, and this pattern began to repeat itself. Because when you treat failure as a teacher, not as an executioner, you grow 10 times faster than everyone around you. Let me ask you some direct questions. How many errors have you transformed into learning in recent months? How many attempts did you forego for fear of looking foolish? How many dreams did you put aside because someone would judge you? The truth is simple. Your errors were never the problem. Your relationship with them is what defines whether you fail or prosper. And now we move on to one of the most important attitudes, one that literally defines whether someone will reach $1 million or merely wish for it. Attitude 6. Study wealth as one would study a profession, because that's exactly what it is. The vast majority of people want prosperity, but they don't study prosperity. They want financial freedom, but they don't study money. They want $1 million, but they spend more time studying entertainment than finance, business, skills, communication, and psychology. And here's the most curious part. Nobody is born knowing how to handle money, but almost everyone lives as if it were instinctive. Yet when you observe the science, you realize that the human brain is programmed to make financial mistakes. It makes emotional decisions. It seeks immediate gratification. It avoids risk irrationally. It interprets loss 2.5 times worse than an equivalent gain. It overestimates small chances and underestimates large probabilities. Do you see the problem? The human brain, as it is, was never designed to build wealth. That's why knowledge changes everything. I began studying obsessively. Human behavior, business, investments, psychology, sales, influence, negotiation, energy, productivity, high-performance rituals. I read as if my life depended on it. And in a way, it did. Because without knowledge, I would have become a statistic. And perhaps you don't know, but I had a rule. Read at least 1 book per day, even if it was through accelerated reading. Perhaps that sounds crazy, but the truth is, when you train your brain to constantly absorb knowledge, everything transforms. Your way of thinking changes, your perception changes, your behavior changes, your financial pattern changes. And look, I'm not talking about reading excessively, but about intentionally studying what brings you closer to your goal. If you want $1 million in 1 year, you need to learn about scale, multiplication, strategy, pricing, digital business, physical business, audience, attention, personal brand, persuasion, analysis, productivity, management, the psychology of money. And here's a powerful example. There are a huge number of famous and talented people who went broke precisely because they never studied money. A striking case is that of Mike Tyson, one of the greatest athletes in history, literally a millionaire still young, but without any knowledge of financial management. The result? He lost practically everything. Not due to a lack of talent, not due to a lack of opportunities, but due to a lack of mastery over money. And it's impressive how this happens to ordinary people in the same way. The pattern repeats. The more financial ignorance, the more financial suffering. The more financial knowledge, the more freedom. Now let me ask you, do you study money with the same seriousness that you study your profession? Do you invest time in learning how to multiply, save, scale, invest, and protect your income? Or do you just wait for things to get better? Because here's a truth I learned early. Wealth loves a prepared mind, and it abandons those who live by improvisation. In all these years working with thousands of people, there's a pattern that still impresses me today. Most people know exactly what they should do, but simply don't do it. And when I ask why, they give me different answers, but they all mean the same thing. Fear disguised as logic. Attitude 7. Make quick decisions and quick adjustments. The opposite of paralyzing procrastination that destroys fortunes. One of the biggest illusions of modern life is believing that we need security to act. But let me tell you a harsh truth. If you wait for security to start, you never start. I learned this in an almost traumatic way. At various moments in my life, extraordinary opportunities arose without any prior warning. There was no guarantee. There was no perfect plan. There was no absolute certainty. There was only one choice: act now or lose it forever. And I clearly remember one of those situations. I was faced with an opportunity to expand my trainings to a volume I had never imagined. It was risky, very risky. And everything inside me screamed, what if it goes wrong? What if you fail? What if everything collapses? But there was also a small flame saying, what if this changes your life? and I chose to act, without overthinking, without trying to predict every detail of the future. And this decision, which could have just been another fear on my list, ended up opening doors that completely transformed everything. Reach, impact, revenue, freedom. Have you ever lived that? That chance that appears, but which you kill even before trying, telling yourself phrases like, "Now is not the time. I need to organize myself better. Let me think a bit more. Maybe next month." And what happens? Nothing changes. Time passes. The dream cools. Motivation is lost. And when we realize it, we are in exactly the same place. Let me give you a powerful scientific fact. The human brain creates natural resistance to action after 5 seconds of hesitation. This means that if you don't decide quickly, your mind automatically sabotages you. Therefore, the attitude is, decide fast, adjust fast, improve fast, advance fast. When you act fast, you learn faster. When you learn faster, you make fewer mistakes. When you make fewer mistakes, you grow more. And when you grow more, money arrives much sooner. Hesitation is a sophisticated form of self-sabotage, and you deserve better than that. Attitude 8. Create an environment that pulls you up, because no one wins alone. I've seen incredibly talented people fail because they were surrounded by those who drained their energy, hope, and ambition. And I've seen ordinary people achieve extraordinary results simply by being in the right environment. Your environment is more powerful than willpower. That's not opinion, that's science. Studies show that your habits tend to mirror the habits of the 5 people closest to you. Your level of ambition tends to match the average of your social circle. Your goals shrink when you spend time with pessimistic people. Your happiness increases when you spend time with emotionally stable people. Your brain literally synchronizes emotional patterns with those you frequently interact with. In other words, your environment is shaping your financial life even as you sleep. And look, I'm no exception. I also needed to change my environment, and that was one of the most difficult decisions I've ever made. Some people simply couldn't keep up with my pace of growth. Others tried to push me back into their comfort zone. Some said my ideas were too big, too crazy, too risky. And the truth is, if I had listened to those people, nothing I've built would exist today. A case I'll never forget happened when I was still living in a tiny apartment. I had a colleague who always used to say, "Why do you study so much? Do you think you'll become a millionaire like that?" And every time I heard that, I felt my body shrink within. It was incredible how a single phrase could cut my energy in half, until one day I realized I wasn't failing due to a lack of discipline. I was failing because my environment didn't allow my ambition to breathe. So I did something radical. I distanced myself. I gravitated towards people who were building something, not destroying dreams. I connected with people who asked me better questions, gave me better perspectives, offered better ideas. And my life changed at an astonishing speed. And here's a direct question for you. Do the people around you pull you up or pull you down? Do they boost your courage or amplify your fear? Do they celebrate your growth or get bothered when you improve? Because there's a very curious psychological pattern. When you grow, people who aren't growing with you try to pull you back to their level. Not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of seeing you achieve what they never had the courage to try. And here's what I learned firsthand. If you want 1 million in 1 year, you need to be surrounded by people who believe it's possible. People who talk about goals, not problems. People who talk about solutions, not excuses. People who talk about movement, not fear. Environment is destiny, and if you change your environment, you change your destiny. When I look back at everything I've experienced, I realize that most people are just one step, only one, away from completely transforming their financial reality. But that step is almost never about technique, method, or strategy. It's almost always about courage, clarity, and consistency. And that's exactly what comes up now, in the final 2 attitudes. Attitude 9, learning to say no to protect your future, something most people never do. I discovered something no one told me in childhood. Wealth isn't built by saying yes to everything, but by saying no to almost everything. And this is one of the biggest difficulties I see in people. They know they need to save, but they say yes to small expenses that drain energy and money. They know they need to focus, but they say yes to distractions that steal productivity. They know they need to grow, but they say yes to people, environments, and conversations that diminish their ambition. And what's most striking is that this isn't about money. It's about emotional boundaries. I experienced this intensely when I started growing. The more I advanced, the more people asked me for help, favors, time, attention, presence, and often wanting to please everyone, I'd say yes to everything and no to myself. This drained me. It left me exhausted. It prevented me from focusing on what truly mattered. It was like trying to run a marathon with someone holding your shirt from behind. And then, one night, exhausted after a series of talks, I realized something simple yet profound. If I kept saying yes to everyone, I'd end up destroying the very thing I most wanted to build. Saying no is painful, but saying yes to what holds you back is far more so. And let me ask you some direct questions. How many times have you said yes because you were afraid to disappoint someone? How many times have you said yes knowing it would slow you down? How many times have you said yes out of guilt and not out of conviction? The truth is, you don't lose friends when you learn to say no. You only lose those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. And here's a simple but transformative practice. For 7 days before saying yes, ask yourself, does this contribute to my goal or move me away from it? If it moves you away, say no, with firmness, with love, but say no. You'll realize it's not the world holding you back from growing, it's the poorly managed yeses. Attitude 10. Thinking big, the mindset that creates multiplied results. There's an invisible barrier that limits most people's financial growth. It's not talent. It's not intelligence. It's not social status. It's mindset. I realized this early in my career when I was leading a small training session. Despite giving my best, there was an uncomfortable feeling inside me as if something was limited. And then, in the silence of my own thoughts, I noticed something that seemed obvious, but which I had never seen before. My problem wasn't a lack of ability, it was a lack of scale. I was thinking too small for the impact I wanted to create. And perhaps you're experiencing exactly that. You work hard, but within a small space. You dedicate yourself, but to something that only grows to a certain point. You give your maximum, but you don't multiply. You just maintain. And let me tell you one thing I've learned over all these years. Effort doesn't take you to the next level. Scale does. Scale is when you create something that continues producing even without your constant presence. It's when your service becomes a method. Your method becomes a product. Your product becomes a system. And your system becomes multiplication. That's why people who build fortunes, great fortunes, have one characteristic in common. They don't think about working more. They think about how to multiply their own impact. And here's something curious from neuroscience. The human brain tends to drastically underestimate what it can do in 12 months and overestimate what it needs to start. That's why so many people get stuck. It's not because it's difficult, it's because they think too small. Now let me ask you, if you had to multiply your income by 10 in the next year without working 10 times more, what would you create? What scalable idea would you put out into the world? What product would you build? What skill would you monetize massively? This question seems uncomfortable at first, but when you truly confront it, everything changes. Thinking big isn't about greed. It's about unleashing the full potential you carry, and that perhaps has been dormant for years. And you know what impresses me most? It's realizing that at some point along the way, we all feel that sense of, it's too big for me. As if 1 million, financial freedom, stability, security, impact, were things reserved for other types of people. But when you look at your own story, you realize you've already overcome far greater things than you imagine. And perhaps, just perhaps, you are one attitude, just one, away from turning the key you've been trying to turn for years. And as you breathe and absorb all this now, I want you to remember, your next level isn't distant. It's simply inaccessible to the you who still thinks small, limits yourself, hesitates, sabotages yourself. But it is totally accessible to the you who chooses to act, learn, adjust, grow, and take charge of your own destiny. It's curious how life responds when you decide to raise your standards, almost as if it's been waiting for this moment all along. And perhaps that moment is now.